The mind is a vast and intricate web of thoughts, emotions, and memories, always shifting, always adapting, always searching for patterns in the chaos. Yet within this endless stream of consciousness, there exist unseen forces, subtle manipulations that shape the way we think, feel, and perceive the world. These tricks are not always malicious. Sometimes they are woven into the very fabric of human interaction, guiding decisions, influencing beliefs, and bending reality in ways most never even notice. Tonight, as you settle into the quiet comfort of your surroundings, let your mind drift like a leaf upon a slow-moving river. There is no rush, no urgency, just the gentle unraveling of ideas, one by one, like waves rolling softly upon the shore. With each breath, allow tension to dissolve. Let your thoughts become lighter and welcome the slow, deliberate descent into relaxation. As we explore the many ways the mind can be shaped, you don't need to hold on too tightly to each concept. Let them flow through you, like a whisper in the dark, a fleeting impression upon the surface of your consciousness. There is nothing to resist, nothing to analyze. Only the quiet unraveling of the mind's hidden mechanisms, lulling you deeper and deeper into a tranquil, weightless state. And as the journey begins, let yourself surrender to the pull of sleep, knowing that in this moment you are safe, at peace, and exactly where you need to be. Gaslighting. Imagine a candle flickering in a dimly lit room. Its glow is soft, warm, comforting, yet delicate, so easily swayed by the gentlest breath of wind. Gaslighting is like that wind, unseen but ever present, whispering doubts into the flame of certainty. It does not force, it does not command, it merely nudges, suggesting, questioning, rewriting the past, one flicker at a time. And as you sit in that quiet room watching the candle dance, you wonder, was it always this dim, or has something changed? The nature of gaslighting is not in its harshness, but in its softness. It does not demand you to believe something outright, but instead, it invites you to question yourself. A misplaced key, a forgotten word, a story retold but with details slightly altered. That never happened, they say, their voice steady, unwavering, and you hesitate. Perhaps you misremembered, perhaps you misunderstood. The thought plants itself quietly, taking root in the soil of uncertainty. There is a strange kind of fog that settles over the mind when doubt seeps in. Memories that once felt sharp and clear become smudged, like ink bleeding into damp paper. Were you really late that day, or was that just what they told you? Did you actually say those words, or are you only remembering what they claimed you said? The lines blur, the certainty fades, and soon you are left grasping at shadows, unsure of what is real and what is imagined. Gaslighting is not about force, it is about erosion, a slow chipping away of confidence, a quiet dismantling of self-trust. At first, the changes are small, almost imperceptible. A tiny shift in a conversation, a subtle contradiction, a harmless correction. But over time, these small moments accumulate like grains of sand, forming dunes that shift and bury the truth beneath them. You find yourself second-guessing everything. Did you turn off the stove? You could have sworn you did, but when you check, it's still on. You're always so forgetful, they say with a chuckle, their words gentle, almost affectionate. It is disarming how easily they make you doubt yourself. And so, you begin to rely on them more, trusting their version of reality over your own. There is a kind of exhaustion that comes with constant uncertainty. The mind grows weary from the weight of endless self-questioning, and slowly, it becomes easier to surrender, to let them tell you how things happened, to let them be the keeper of truth. It feels safer that way, less draining, less frightening, and so you sink into the comfort of their certainty, even as it dims the light of your own awareness. Imagine standing before a mirror, but instead of your reflection staring back at you, the glass is fogged, distorted. You know yourself, or at least you thought you did. But now that image is unclear, as if someone has reached into your mind and rearranged the pieces. Gaslighting is not just about making you doubt events, it is about making you doubt yourself, your perception, your judgment, your very identity. The mind, when caught in this web of distortion, becomes a maze with no clear exits. You retrace your steps, trying to remember what was real, but each path leads to another dead end, another contradiction. They are always one step ahead, ready with a new explanation, a new reason why you are wrong. The walls shift, the doors disappear, and you are left wandering in circles, unsure of where you began. And yet there is something deep within you, a quiet voice that refuses to be silenced, a whisper that tells you something is not right. Though it has been buried, though it has been doubted and questioned and rewritten, it still lingers in the corners of your mind, waiting to be heard. It is the part of you that remembers, the part that knows. But gaslighting is not just a battle of logic. It is a battle of emotion. They do not just twist facts, they twist feelings. They make you feel unreasonable for questioning them, irrational for pushing back. "Why are you making such a big deal out of this?" they ask, their tone filled with exasperation. You always overreact. And so you begin to wonder, are you overreacting? Are you being too sensitive? The doubt tightens its grip, making it harder and harder to trust your instincts. Imagine walking through a house where the furniture is constantly being rearranged. Every time you reach for something, it is not where you left it. Every time you try to navigate, the layout has shifted. This is what gaslighting does to the mind. It disrupts the familiar, distorts the known, until reality itself becomes an ever-changing puzzle, impossible to solve. But the most insidious part of gaslighting is that it does not always feel like manipulation. Sometimes it feels like love, like care, like protection. "I'm only trying to help you," they say. "I just want what's best for you." And you believe them, because it is easier to believe them. Because the alternative, that someone you trust is deliberately misleading you, is too painful to accept. And so you adjust. You learn to shrink yourself, to question yourself before they ever have to. You apologize for things you are not even sure you did. You let them define your reality, because resisting feels like wading against an endless tide. You let go, piece by piece, until one day you look in the mirror and no longer recognize the person staring back. But even in the deepest fog, there is always a way out. It may start as a flicker, an old memory that refuses to be rewritten, a gut feeling that persists despite their words. Slowly, like sunlight breaking through clouds, clarity begins to return. You start to see the patterns, the contradictions, the inconsistencies, and with each piece of truth that resurfaces, the illusion begins to crumble. Gaslighting thrives in isolation, in darkness, in silence. But truth is a flame. And once it is lit, it spreads, pushing back against the shadows, illuminating what was hidden. The first step to breaking free is remembering that the light was never truly gone. It was only obscured, waiting for you to find it again. And so, as you rest now, let your mind drift gently, free of doubt, free of confusion. Let the weight of uncertainty melt away, leaving only clarity, only calm. Reality is not as fragile as they made it seem. Your memories are not as unreliable as they claimed. You are not lost in the fog, you are simply waking up from it. And with each slow, steady breath, you reclaim the truth that was always yours. Brainwashing. There is something unsettling about the way water shapes stone. It does not do so with force, nor with sudden impact. It is patient. It flows over the surface, gently, endlessly, wearing down even the hardest rock over time. Brainwashing works in much the same way. Slow, steady, and imperceptible until the mind has been reshaped entirely. You do not notice the change at first, just as a river does not realize it is carving a canyon. But one day, you look back and wonder how you ever thought differently, how the contours of your mind became something unrecognizable. It begins with isolation. A mind that is cut off from outside influences becomes like a room with no windows, no doors, only the echoes of the same voice, over and over again. The world beyond those walls fades into abstraction, and soon the only reality that exists is the one that is fed to you. This is the truth, they say, their words smooth, unquestionable. Everything else is a lie. And at first you resist. You hold on to what you know, gripping your old beliefs like a lifeline. But the current is strong, and resistance is tiring. There is comfort in repetition. The same phrases, the same ideas, whispered like a lullaby, until they settle into the crevices of your mind. At first, they are foreign, unfamiliar, but repetition breeds familiarity, and familiarity breeds acceptance. The mind, when exposed to something often enough, begins to mistake it for truth. And so the old thoughts, the old certainties, begin to unravel, thread by thread, replaced with a new tapestry woven from someone else's design. They do not force you to believe. They simply create a world where disbelief is impossible. Contradictions are erased before they can be questioned. Alternative perspectives are dismissed before they can be considered. Every path you take, every doubt you entertain, leads you back to the same answer. This is the only way, they say, and the walls close in tighter. You do not realize you are being led. You simply walk where the path is open, unaware that every other door has already been locked. Brainwashing is not just about controlling thoughts, it is about controlling emotions. Fear is a powerful tool, and they wield it masterfully. The outside world will hurt you, they say, only we can keep you safe. And so, you cling to them, not out of conviction, but out of fear of what lies beyond. Even if doubt creeps in, even if something deep inside you whispers that something is wrong, the fear is stronger. What if they are right? What if leaving means stepping into danger? There is a strange comfort in surrender. At some point, fighting against the tide becomes too exhausting, and letting go feels like the easier choice. You stop questioning, stop resisting. You allow their words to become your thoughts, their beliefs to become your own. And in that surrender, a kind of peace settles in, a hollow, manufactured peace, but peace nonetheless. It is easier to believe than to doubt, easier to conform than to fight. But even in the most controlled mind, something lingers. A fragment of the past, a memory that refuses to be erased, a question that does not fully disappear. It is buried deep, hidden beneath layers of conditioning, but it is there. A spark waiting for oxygen. A door waiting to be reopened. And sometimes all it takes is a single moment, an inconsistency, a contradiction, a slip in the carefully constructed narrative to reignite that spark. Waking up from brainwashing is like emerging from a deep sleep. At first, the light is too bright, the world too sharp, too disorienting. You question yourself more than you question them. Could it really have been a lie? Could you really have been deceived? But the more you step away, the clearer the fog becomes. You begin to see the patterns, the tactics, the ways in which your mind was molded like clay. And with each realization, the spell weakens. Reclaiming your mind is not easy. It takes time to unlearn what has been ingrained, to trust yourself again after being taught to doubt your own thoughts. But with each breath, with each quiet moment of clarity, you come back to yourself. You remember who you were before the walls were built around you. And as those walls begin to crumble, you find that the world outside was never as terrifying as they made it seem. Love bombing. There is something intoxicating about being adored. The way their words wrap around you like a warm embrace, the way their attention feels like sunlight breaking through a long winter. It is overwhelming, all-consuming, a tide that rushes in and lifts you off your feet. And for a while, you float in it, weightless, carried by the sheer force of their affection. You are everything, they say, their voice dripping with sincerity. I've never felt this way before. And you believe them, because how could something this intense not be real? At first, it feels like a dream. They are everywhere, always, filling your days with messages, your nights with whispered devotion. They memorize every detail, every preference, every small quirk, as if they are studying you, absorbing you. No one has ever understood me like you do, they tell you, and your heart swells. There is a kind of magic in being seen so completely, in feeling like you have finally found the person who will never let you go. But love should feel steady, like a river that moves with quiet certainty, not a storm that crashes down without warning. And yet this love is not steady. It is urgent, desperate, a fire that burns too hot, too fast. They want everything, all at once. I can't live without you, they confess, their eyes searching yours. Tell me you feel the same. And you do, or at least you think you do. Because how could you not, when they have made you the center of their world? There is no space, no breath between moments. They are always there, always calling, always needing. And if you pull away, even slightly, the warmth flickers. Their face falls, their voice trembles. Do you not love me as much as I love you? The words are soft, but the weight of them is heavy. A test, a plea, a warning. And so, you reassure them, again and again. Because the last thing you want is to lose this love, this beautiful, dizzying love. But love is not meant to feel like obligation. It is not meant to feel like something you must prove over and over. And yet, with each passing day, it feels less like a choice and more like a responsibility. The grand gestures, the overwhelming affection, it should feel like devotion, but instead it feels like a net tightening around you. You tell yourself this is what love is supposed to be, that passion should be consuming. But deep down, something feels off, even if you cannot name it. And then, the shift begins. It is not sudden, it is subtle, creeping in like a slow-moving shadow. The praise that once lifted you now feels conditional. The warmth that once surrounded you now feels suffocating. They begin to pull away, just enough to make you chase them, just enough to make you wonder if you have done something wrong. I feel like you're different, they say, their voice laced with disappointment, like you're not as invested as before. So you try harder, you give more, you let their love dictate your days, your emotions, your sense of self, because the thought of losing them feels unbearable, as if without their love, you will disappear. And that is the trick of love bombing. It is not just about making you fall. It is about making you dependent, making their validation your lifeline, making their approval the only thing that feels real. And once they have you, once they know you are fully, helplessly theirs, the love changes. The praise that once came freely is now a reward, given only when you behave as they want. The affection that once surrounded you is now something to be earned. And when you try to pull away, to reclaim even a small part of yourself, the warmth turns cold. The adoration turns into silence. The devotion turns into punishment. It is in that silence that you finally see the truth. Love should not be a test. It should not be a condition. Real love does not rush to claim you, only to hold you hostage. And as you step back, as you see the pattern for what it is, the illusion begins to crack. You are not loved, you are controlled. You are not cherished, you are consumed. But you are not powerless. You are not a prisoner of their affections. Love does not need to be a tidal wave that drowns you. It can be a gentle stream, steady and true. And as you let yourself drift now, away from the chaos, away from the weight of their expectations, you find something quieter, something calmer. A love that does not demand, but simply exists. A love that starts with you. Guilt tripping. Guilt is a strange weight. It does not sit on your shoulders like a burden you can see, nor does it chain your hands like something you can fight against. Instead, it seeps into the cracks of your mind, silent, invisible, curling around your thoughts like a whisper you cannot ignore. It does not shout, it does not force. It simply lingers, waiting, growing heavier with every moment you hesitate, every step you take away from the expectations placed upon you. At first, it feels like responsibility, like a duty you owe to someone who has given so much. After everything I've done for you, they say, their voice soft, wounded. And in that moment, the weight settles in, pressing against your ribs, tightening in your chest. How could you say no? How could you walk away when they have sacrificed so much? The world becomes small, narrowed down to the choice before you. Choose yourself, or choose them. And if you choose yourself, you must carry the burden of knowing you have disappointed them. Guilt is not always loud. Sometimes it is nothing more than a sigh, a look, a pause in the conversation, heavy enough to make you question yourself. They do not have to say the words outright. They do not have to demand. Instead, they let you feel it, let you sit in the discomfort of knowing that you could have done more, that you should have done more. And so, you give in, not because you want to, but because the alternative is unbearable. The mind has a way of justifying its own imprisonment. You tell yourself that you are being kind, that you are being selfless, that this is what love, what friendship, what family is supposed to be. But real love does not ask you to carry guilt like a debt to be repaid. Real love does not make you feel small for choosing yourself. And yet here you are, shrinking, folding, making yourself smaller and smaller so that they will not have to feel the pain of your absence. Guilt tripping is not about control in the way that force is. It does not break you. It bends you over and over until you no longer remember what it felt like to stand tall. It rewrites the story in your mind, turning your choices into betrayals, your independence into selfishness. I just want what's best for you, they say. But somehow, what's best for you always seems to be what benefits them. And the worst part? You believe them. You convince yourself that you are in the wrong, that you have been ungrateful, unkind. The voice in your head is no longer your own. It is theirs, whispering doubts, second-guessing every decision, every step you take toward freedom. Maybe I should have stayed, you think. Maybe I should have done more. And the weight grows heavier. But guilt is not love. Obligation is not devotion. You are allowed to choose yourself without apology, without explanation. You are allowed to say no without carrying the burden of someone else's disappointment. The people who truly care for you will not make their love conditional upon your sacrifice. So breathe now. Let go of the weight. Let the guilt slip away, like water running through your fingers. You do not have to hold on to it. You do not have to carry it any longer. The love that is meant for you will never ask you to diminish yourself to receive it. Cultivating dependence. There is a quiet kind of control that does not come with chains or threats, but with gentle hands and soothing words. It does not force itself upon you. It invites you in, making itself indispensable. At first, it feels like care, like devotion, like a love so deep that it becomes woven into the fabric of your life. I just want to take care of you, they say, their voice full of warmth. You don't have to worry about anything. I'll handle it all. And for a while, it feels like relief, like safety. At first, you do not notice the shift. You lean on them, just a little, just in the small ways. They offer advice when you are uncertain, comfort when you are lost. Their presence becomes a steady rhythm in your days, predictable, reliable. I don't know what I'd do without you, you tell them, and you mean it. And they smile, satisfied, because that is exactly what they want, to be irreplaceable. Slowly, they begin to take more responsibility for you. Not out of force, but out of insistence, disguised as kindness. Let me handle that for you, they say. You don't need to worry about it. And you let them because it is easier, because it feels good to be cared for. But with every decision they make for you, with every small thing they take off your plate, you begin to forget how to do them yourself. You do not see the trap closing in. It is soft, gentle, made of silk instead of steel. But one day, you wake up and realize that you do not know how to stand on your own anymore. The things you once did effortlessly now feel impossible without them. The decisions you once made with confidence now feel uncertain. I don't think I can do this alone, you say, and they nod, as if confirming something they have known all along. You don't have to, they reassure you. I'll always be here. And that is when you realize the truth. It is not love that keeps them close to you. It is necessity. They have made themselves your foundation, your anchor, your lifeline. They have removed your ability to function without them, ensuring that you will never leave. Not because you do not want to, but because you no longer believe you can. Dependence feels like safety until it feels like captivity. It feels like love until you realize that love should not make you weaker. Love should not require you to give up pieces of yourself in order to keep it. And as you begin to question, to reach for your own independence, the warmth in their voice begins to change. After everything I've done for you, they say, their tone just a little sharper, you're just going to leave? The weight of that guilt is crushing. They have done so much. They have been there through everything. How could you possibly walk away? How could you be so ungrateful? But deep down, beneath the layers of dependence, beneath the habits that have formed around them, there is still a part of you that remembers who you were before they came along. A part of you that knows you are capable, strong, Reclaiming your independence is not easy. It is slow, like learning how to walk again after years of being carried. But each step you take, each decision you make on your own, is a step back to yourself. And as you learn to stand again, the fear that once kept you tethered begins to fade. You realize that you were never incapable. You were simply made to believe you were. Learned helplessness. There is a strange kind of exhaustion that does not come from effort, but from the absence of it. A tiredness that settles deep, not in the body, but in the mind, in the soul. It is the kind of weariness that makes you stop trying, not because you want to give up, but because you have come to believe that trying is pointless. That no matter what you do, the outcome will always be the same. It does not happen all at once. It begins slowly, subtly, with small defeats that seem insignificant at first. You push against something, an unfair situation, an impossible challenge, a person who refuses to listen. And when you fail, you tell yourself to try again. So you do, again and again. But each time the result is the same. No progress, no change, no escape. At first you fight harder. You convince yourself that maybe you just have not tried enough. So you put in more effort, push yourself further, refuse to back down. that the more you try, the more resistance you meet. The more effort you give, the more the world pushes back, unyielding, indifferent. And one day, a thought slips into your mind, so small and quiet that you barely notice it. Maybe this is just the way things are. That thought is the beginning of the end. You do not stop fighting right away, but something shifts inside you. A hesitation, a doubt. You begin to wonder if all the energy you have spent, all the struggle, has been for nothing. And when the next obstacle comes, you do not meet it with the same force. You hesitate, you hold back, and when it knocks you down, you stay down just a little longer than before. Over time, the world begins to shrink. The things you once thought possible now feel distant, unreachable. You watch others move forward, solve problems, make choices, and you wonder how they do it. What do they have that you do not? Why is it so easy for them and so impossible for you? But deep down, you already know the answer. They still believe they have control. You, on the other hand, have learned that control is an illusion, and so you adapt. You stop resisting. You accept. When things go wrong, you do not try to fix them. You simply endure. When someone mistreats you, you do not push back. You let it happen. When an opportunity arises, you do not take it. You assume it was never meant for you. This is just my life, you think. There's nothing I can do to change it. And with every passing day, that belief settles deeper, rooting itself into the core of who you are. But learned helplessness is not just about what you do. It is about how you see yourself. You begin to believe that you are incapable, that you are weak, that the reason nothing ever changes is not because the world is unfair, but because you are simply not strong enough to shape it. And so even when the door is open, even when the cage is no longer locked, you do not leave, because you no longer believe that you can. And yet there is still a part of you, buried, quiet, almost forgotten, that remembers. A part of you that once believed in possibilities, in choices, in freedom. A part of you that has not given up, even if the rest of you has. And sometimes, in the stillness of your mind, that part whispers, "What if you tried one more time?" The thought is terrifying. It feels like standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down at a drop so vast that it makes your legs shake. Because what if you try again, and nothing changes? What if you reach for something, and once again, it slips through your fingers? What if you prove once and for all that you really are powerless? But there is another possibility, one you have not considered in a long time. What if, this time, things are different? What if, after all this time, you still have the power to change your life? The idea feels distant, almost impossible, but it lingers. And for the first time in a long time, you feel something other than resignation. You feel curiosity, so you take a small step. You push back just a little. Not with the expectation of success, but simply to see what happens. And when the world does not crumble, when the resistance is not as strong as you imagined, you take another step, then another. And slowly, painfully, you begin to remember what it feels like to try. It is not easy. The doubts still whisper, the fear still lingers, but with each step forward, the weight on your shoulders grows lighter. You begin to realize that the prison you have lived in was never real. It was built in your mind, made of beliefs that were never truly yours to begin with. And so you reclaim yourself, bit by bit, moment by moment, until one day you look back and see how far you have come. And you realize that you are not helpless. You never were. You were only made to believe you were. Let yourself rest in that truth now. Let it sink in, deeper than the doubt, deeper than the fear. You are not trapped. You are not powerless. And as you drift now into sleep, let yourself feel the quiet strength that has always been within you. Stockholm Syndrome. It is a strange thing, the way the mind learns to survive. How it adapts, shifts, bends itself around impossible situations until they begin to feel normal. Until fear becomes comfort and captivity begins to feel like home. It does not happen all at once. It is slow, insidious, creeping in like a shadow stretching across the floor, unnoticed until it is everywhere. At first, there is only fear. The kind that grips your chest, makes your breath shallow, turns every muscle in your body rigid with the instinct to flee. You want to escape, to fight, to push back against the hands that hold you here. But the walls are too high, the doors too strong, and no one is coming to save you. So you wait, heart pounding, mind racing, trying to make sense of the world that has suddenly become so small. And then something changes. A moment of kindness, small but significant, like a drop of water in an empty glass. Perhaps it is a softer tone, a look of concern, an unexpected gesture that does not align with the cruelty you have come to expect. "Are you okay?" they ask. And though the words should mean nothing, they do. Because in this place, kindness is rare, and you are desperate for it. The mind is a fragile thing, wired for survival above all else. It seeks patterns, clings to hope, reshapes reality in whatever way it must to endure. So when the hand that once struck you offers comfort, your mind latches onto that moment, magnifies it, redefines the person before you. Maybe they are not so bad. Maybe they care. Maybe deep down, they do not want to hurt you at all. And so, the shift begins. You start to see them differently. Not just as a captor, but as someone complicated, someone misunderstood. You tell yourself that they are not cruel, they are just hurting, that their anger is not their fault, that they only act this way because they have no other choice. If I can just be better, you think. If I can just make them happy, maybe things will change. You do not realize you are slipping, that your mind is rewriting the story, twisting fear into affection, dependence into love. Each time they show kindness, the bond deepens. Each time they hurt you, you justify it. They didn't mean it, you whisper. They were just having a bad day. And when they apologize, when they say they are sorry with eyes that seem sincere, relief floods through you like warmth in the cold. Because you want to believe them. You need to believe them. The outside world fades. You forget what it felt like to live without this push and pull, this cycle of fear and comfort, pain and reassurance. Their approval becomes everything. You seek it, crave it, do whatever you must to earn it. Not because you are weak, but because the alternative is unbearable. The idea that you are alone, that no one else understands, that the only safety you have left is in their hands. Time stretches, blurs. You lose track of who you were before, of the life you once had. The walls that once felt like a prison now feel like protection. The person who once terrified you now feels like the only thing keeping you safe. And when someone asks, when they try to pull you away, you resist. They're not what you think, you insist. They love me. They take care of me. Because the truth is too painful to accept, that you have come to love the cage that holds you. But deep inside, beneath the layers of denial, there is a voice, small, quiet, but insistent. It tells you that this is not love, that real love does not come with chains, does not make you shrink, does not ask you to endure suffering in exchange for moments of kindness. And when that voice grows louder, when the cracks begin to show, the fear returns. Because if you admit the truth, if you acknowledge what has happened, then you must also face the reality that you have been trapped. Breaking free is not easy. It is painful, terrifying, like stepping into the light after years in the dark. But as the distance grows, as the fog in your mind begins to lift, you see the truth for what it is. And it is not love. It never was. Memory manipulation. Memory is a fragile thing, more delicate than we like to admit. We think of it as a recording, a faithful archive of all that has happened, but it is not. It is fluid, shifting, rewriting itself without our permission. Sometimes the changes are small, details that fade, edges that blur, but sometimes memory is molded by unseen hands, reshaped into something unrecognizable. And the most unsettling part? You may never even realize it has happened. It starts with a doubt, a hesitation, a moment where someone tells you that what you remember is wrong. That's not how it happened, they say, their voice calm, certain. At first you resist. You trust your mind, your own experience. But they persist, feeding you new details, altering the sequence, making you question the certainty you once had. You always do this, they sigh. You twist things. And suddenly you wonder, do I? The more they repeat their version, the more your own begins to fade. Memory is not fixed. It is a story we tell ourselves, and stories can change. They plant seeds of uncertainty, little contradictions that gnaw at the edges of what you once knew to be true. And soon, you begin to question yourself. Did I really say that? Was I really there? Was it ever as bad or as good as I remember? You do not notice the shift at first. You assume your memory is simply unreliable, that you were mistaken. But the more they rewrite the past, the more you start to believe them. Your mind, so eager to make sense of things, fills in the gaps with their words. And before long, their version of reality becomes your own. But it does not stop there. They use your reshaped memories against you, twisting them into proof of your own failures. Remember when you said you'd never leave me? They remind you, even if you do not recall saying it. Remember when you promised, and you do. Not because you actually did, but because the certainty in their voice drowns out the uncertainty in yours. They weaponize nostalgia too, painting the past in colors that never truly existed. We used to be happy, they say, and your mind, eager for comfort, clings to that thought. Maybe it was not so bad. Maybe you were the one who changed. Maybe you are the problem. And so you stop trusting yourself. You second-guess every memory, every instinct, every thought that contradicts what they have told you. You rely on them to tell you what is real, what is true. Because your own mind has become a maze, filled with shadows of things you once knew but can no longer grasp. But memory is not just a tool for manipulation. It is a source of power. When someone controls your past, they control your present, your identity, your choices, the very way you see yourself. If they make you believe that you were always weak, you will never fight back. If they make you believe that they saved you, you will never leave. Yet, even the most carefully constructed illusions have cracks. A moment, a conversation, a dream. Something small but undeniable that does not fit the version they have given you. And once that crack forms, it spreads. You start to remember, not the version they gave you, but the truth buried beneath it. The things they told you did not happen, the feelings they told you were not real. And with each memory that returns, a piece of yourself returns with it. It is terrifying, the process of reclaiming your own mind, because to do so means confronting the reality of what has been done to you. It means admitting that you were deceived, manipulated, made to doubt the very core of who you are. But with that realization comes something else: freedom. The understanding that you do not have to accept their version anymore. That your memories, your truth, belong to you. And as you drift now, sinking into sleep, let yourself feel that truth settle in. No one else gets to decide who you are. No one else gets to rewrite your past. Let your mind rest, knowing that it is yours again. And as the night stretches on, as dreams begin to take shape, let them be your own. Free, untangled, unshaped by any hand but your own. Fear-mongering fear is the oldest emotion, woven into the fabric of survival, passed down from ancestors who once sat in the dark, watching for predators in the night. It was necessary then, a whisper in the mind that warned of real dangers, a force that sharpened instincts and kept the body ready to flee or fight. But in the modern world, fear has become something else. It is no longer just a response to immediate danger. It is a tool, a weapon, a force that can be shaped and molded by those who understand its power. And once someone learns how to manipulate fear, they can control not just the way you act, but the way you think, the way you see the world, the way you understand your own place within it. It starts with a simple statement, something that does not feel alarming at first. A caution, a warning, a reminder that the world is not as safe as you might believe. You can't trust people, they say. Or you never know what could happen. The words slip into your mind like ink in water, spreading, darkening your perception just a little. You do not notice the change at first. It feels like wisdom, like prudence, like something that is only meant to help you. Then, a story. A tale of someone who was careless, who trusted the wrong person, who took a risk and suffered for it. See, they say, this is what happens when you're not careful. You listen, you nod. The world tilts slightly. You look around with new eyes, ones that search for unseen threats, for the dangers that must surely be hiding in plain sight. And once you start looking, you see them everywhere. That is the trick of fear. It does not need to be real to feel real. It only needs to be suggested, whispered, planted like a seed. Because the human mind is wired for survival, and once it perceives a threat, it will do anything to avoid it. It will create patterns where none exist, see shadows where there are only shapes, rewrite memories to fit the narrative that fear has crafted. And so, the world becomes smaller. You stop taking chances. You avoid situations that once brought you joy. You second-guess people you once trusted. Better safe than sorry, you think. And they nod approvingly, pleased that the fear they have cultivated is taking root. Because once fear controls you, so do they. The worst part is that fear never stays in one place. It spreads. A single doubt turns into 100. Soon you are questioning everything: your choices, your relationships, your ability to navigate the world on your own. You rely on them more and more, seeking their reassurance, their guidance, their protection. And they give it to you, but always with a price. See, they say, without me you wouldn't be safe. And you believe them. Because fear has made you forget that there was ever a time when you were strong enough to stand alone. But fear is not truth. It is a distortion, a lens that narrows the world into something far smaller and darker than it truly is. And yet, breaking free from it is not as simple as realizing the deception. Because fear, once planted, does not easily let go. It lingers in the mind, whispering doubts, conjuring worst-case scenarios, making every step forward feel like stepping off a ledge into the unknown. You try at first to push back, to tell yourself that the world is not as dangerous as you were led to believe. But then something happens. A piece of bad news. A mistake. A moment that seems to confirm everything they warned you about. I told you so, they say. And you retreat again, deeper into the safety of their words, the illusion of protection they have offered. But safety is a cage. It keeps you small, keeps you afraid, keeps you from realizing that life is meant to be lived, not just survived. And if you stay inside it for too long, you start to forget what it felt like to be free. And then, one day a crack appears. A contradiction. A moment where fear does not quite line up with reality. Maybe you take a risk, however small, and nothing bad happens. Maybe you meet someone you were told not to trust, and they show you kindness instead of harm. Maybe, for just a moment, the world feels bigger again. That moment stays with you. It lingers in the back of your mind, even as fear tries to push it away. You start to wonder, what else have you been wrong about? What else have you avoided for no reason other than the belief that you should? And once you begin to ask those questions, fear's grip begins to weaken. It is not easy to step out of fear's shadow. It clings, it fights, it tries to convince you that you are making a mistake, but you take another step, and another. You start to see the world not as a place filled only with danger, but as a place filled with possibility. And slowly, the voice of fear fades. It does not disappear entirely. It never will. But it no longer controls you. It no longer defines your choices, your thoughts, your understanding of the world. You reclaim your mind, your sense of adventure, your trust in yourself. So breathe now. Let go of the weight that fear has placed on your shoulders. Let your mind rest, knowing that you do not have to live within the boundaries that someone else has drawn for you. The world is still vast, still unpredictable, still filled with risks, but it is also filled with wonder, with joy, with experiences waiting to be lived. Emotional blackmail. There is a kind of weight that is not physical, a pressure that does not come from hands, but from words, from sighs, from the heavy silence that fills a room when someone wants something from you. It is invisible, but you feel it pressing down on your chest, making every breath a little harder, every decision a little more complicated. It is the weight of expectation, of obligation, of knowing that if you do not act as they wish, there will be consequences, not direct ones, not spoken aloud, but felt in the way they look at you, the way they withdraw, the way they make you feel as though you have done something terribly wrong. Emotional blackmail is not about force. It is about control, about the careful weaving of guilt and love, fear and responsibility, until you can no longer tell where your own desires end and theirs begin. It is a slow process, one that starts so subtly that you do not notice it happening. A favor asked with just the right tone of voice, a request wrapped in words that make it feel like a test of your love, your loyalty. If you really cared, you would do this for me, they say, and something inside you twists because caring is what you do. It is who you are. So you say yes. But it does not stop with one request. The weight grows inch by inch as they learn how to shape your emotions like clay in their hands. They know which words make you hesitate, which expressions make you question yourself. They know that you want to be kind, that you want to be good, and they use that against you. After everything I've done for you, they remind you, their voice laced with disappointment, and you feel yourself shrinking under the weight of the unspoken debt. At first, you tell yourself that it is just this once, just one compromise, one sacrifice. But then it happens again and again. And each time, the guilt feels heavier, the fear of upsetting them stronger. The idea of saying no becomes unthinkable, not because they have taken away your ability to refuse, but because they have made it feel like refusing is an act of cruelty, of selfishness. You begin to anticipate their needs before they even speak them, shaping yourself into the version of you that will keep them happy, keep them satisfied. And yet, no matter how much you give, it is never quite enough. The rules shift, the expectations rise, and the weight on your shoulders only grows heavier. You begin to lose sight of who you were before the guilt took hold, before love and obligation became chains that bound you to their desires. You forget what it felt like to make choices for yourself, to set boundaries without fear of repercussions. The worst part is that they make you believe it is your fault, that you are the one who is failing, who is not doing enough, who is letting them down. They make you feel as though their disappointment, their sadness, their anger is something you are responsible for fixing. And so, you try harder. You give more. You bend further until you are unrecognizable, a shadow of the person you once were. But emotional blackmail is a game without an end, a battle where victory is impossible because the rules are designed to keep you losing. No matter how much you sacrifice, no matter how much you shape yourself to fit their needs, there will always be more expected of you. They will always find new ways to make you feel guilty, new ways to make you believe that love and obligation are the same thing. And then, one day, something shifts. Maybe it is a moment of exhaustion, a flicker of realization that no matter how much you do, they will never be satisfied. Maybe it is a glimpse of yourself in the mirror, the hollow look in your eyes, the weight in your posture. Maybe it is a small act of defiance, saying no, even if only in your mind. And for the first time, the weight does not grow heavier. The thought lingers. The idea that love should not feel like a burden, that caring should not come with chains. You begin to question, to step back, to see the patterns that once felt invisible. And with each small act of resistance, each moment where you choose yourself, the weight begins to lift. It is not easy to break free. The guilt does not vanish overnight, and their disappointment will not simply disappear. But with time, with distance, you start to remember who you were before their expectations shaped you into something else. You begin to reclaim your choices, your autonomy, your right to exist without constantly proving your worth through sacrifice. Playing on insecurities. There are whispers in the mind, quiet doubts that have been with you for as long as you can remember. The voice that tells you you're not good enough, not smart enough, not attractive enough. It is a voice you have learned to live with, an echo of old wounds, a reflection of every moment you have ever questioned your worth. Most days, you push it aside. You remind yourself that it is only fear, only uncertainty, only a trick of the mind. But then, someone comes along who knows exactly how to make that voice louder. It does not begin with outright criticism. No, that would be too obvious. Instead, it starts with a joke, a passing remark, a carefully placed observation that seems harmless on the surface. You always overthink things, they say, smiling, their tone light, as if it's just a casual comment. And you laugh because maybe it's true. Maybe you do overthink. But later, when you are alone, the words linger. Do I always overthink? Is there something wrong with me? That is how it begins, with a seed of doubt, planted so gently that you do not even realize it is there. And once it takes root, they water it with more carefully chosen words, more subtle suggestions, more reminders that your insecurities are not just in your head, but real, obvious, undeniable. You'd be so much more confident if you just fixed that, they say, their voice filled with concern. As if they are only trying to help. I just want what's best for you. And you believe them. Because they seem to care. You begin to see yourself through their eyes, to measure your worth by their approval. You start to change, to shrink, to reshape yourself in the hopes that one day you will finally be good enough. You wear what they like, you speak how they prefer, you silence the parts of yourself that they find inconvenient. And for a while, it feels like progress. Because when you conform to their expectations, they reward you with compliments, with attention, with love. But then, just when you think you are finally enough, they shift the goalpost. I liked you better before, they say, frowning. You're trying too hard. And suddenly you are lost again, unsure of which version of yourself is acceptable, which parts of you are worthy of their approval. The doubt grows, wrapping itself around your confidence like ivy, tightening its grip until you no longer remember what it felt like to stand tall. The cruelest trick of playing on insecurities is that it makes you feel as though the problem is you. That you are the one who needs to change, who needs to try harder, who needs to earn love rather than simply receive it. They make you believe that your flaws are the reason for their disappointment, their criticism, their fleeting affection. And so, you keep searching for ways to fix yourself, never realizing that the real problem is not you, it is them. Because the truth is, they never wanted you to be secure. They never wanted you to feel whole. They wanted you to need them, to rely on their validation, to depend on their approval like a lifeline. They wanted to be the one who decides your worth. Because as long as you are uncertain, as long as you question yourself, they have power over you. But insecurity is not an inherent truth. It is a story, a narrative that can be rewritten. And the first step to breaking free is recognizing the game for what it is. Realizing that their words are not gospel, that their opinions are not a reflection of your value, that the voice in your head, the one they amplified, does not belong to you, it belongs to them. It takes time to unlearn the lies they have planted, to rebuild the confidence they chipped away, to trust yourself again. But with each small act of self-acceptance, each moment where you choose to believe in your own worth, their grip weakens. The voice of doubt becomes quieter, and in its place, a new voice begins to emerge, one that is kind, that is strong, that reminds you that you were never broken to begin with. Triangulation. There is a strange kind of loneliness that does not come from being alone, but from feeling unseen, unheard, unacknowledged in the presence of others. It is the kind of loneliness that grows in the spaces between words, in the glances that shift away too quickly, in the comparisons that turn admiration into competition. And it begins so subtly that you do not notice it at first. You are standing in a conversation where you should belong, where your presence should feel secure. But then a name is mentioned, a story is told, a comparison is drawn. She always understands me better, they say, their voice wistful, their expression distant. He never overreacts like you do. And suddenly, without warning, you are no longer standing on solid ground. Triangulation is not about truth. It is about power, about creating invisible lines that tether you to an unseen rival, a shadow of someone else who is always just a little better, a little more worthy, a little more cherished. It is about making you feel as though love and approval are limited resources, things you must compete for, things that can be taken from you if you're not careful enough, not good enough, not enough. At first, you tell yourself it is nothing, just a passing remark, just an innocent observation. But then it happens again, and again. They never made such a big deal about things. I wish you could be more like them. They understand me in a way you never will. And even if they do not say it outright, you begin to feel it. The weight of the unspoken comparison, the quiet implication that you are losing a game you did not know you were playing. You start to question yourself, to wonder if you are too much, if you are lacking something essential, something that would make them see you the way they see the others they so effortlessly admire. You begin to change, to soften the edges of who you are, to mold yourself into something more palatable, more acceptable. You chase after their approval like a ship lost at sea, always reaching, always hoping to be enough. But the thing about triangulation is that it is designed to keep you chasing. Just when you think you have done enough, when you have proven your worth, the comparison shifts. The names change, the stories evolve, but the message remains the same. Someone else is doing it better. Someone else is closer to their heart than you will ever be. And so, the cycle continues. You try harder. You work to regain their favor, to earn back the security you once felt. But security is the one thing they will never truly give you. Because if you felt safe, if you knew with certainty that you were enough, their power over you would fade. And that is not what they want. They want you unsteady, unsure, always on edge. They want you to feel like love is a prize to be won, something that must be fought for, something that can be taken from you at any moment. Because as long as you are competing, as long as you are questioning, you will never look up long enough to see the strings they are pulling. But there comes a moment when exhaustion outweighs fear, when clarity cuts through the fog, a moment when you realize that no matter how hard you try, you will never win a game that is rigged against you. That love should not feel like a battle, like a constant test, like a competition where the rules are designed to make you fail. And in that moment, you step back. You stop chasing, stop contorting, stop trying to prove something that should never have needed proof. You let them compare, let them play their games, let them dangle their affections like a prize. But you no longer reach for it, because you finally see the truth. Love is not a contest, and you are not a contender. There is a quiet power in walking away, in choosing not to engage, in refusing to let someone else dictate your worth. And as you let go, as you step into the silence of your own certainty, the loneliness begins to fade. Because real love, the kind that does not require competition, the kind that does not make you feel like you're always one step away from losing, has been waiting for you all along.